In this video, I'm going to show you how you can configure a GRE tunnel on the Palo Alto Firewall. So on my screen, you have on the left-hand side, you have the Fortigate firewall. And on the right-hand side, you have the Palo Alto Firewall. Well, if you want the configuration on the Fortigate firewall, you can find the link in the description where I have mentioned the commands and the configuration on the Fortigate firewall. So we'll skip that part. We will cover the configuration on the Palo Alto in this video. So as you can see on screen, 192.168.0.108 is the peer IP, and the local IP for the GRE tunnel on the Palo Alto firewall would be 192.168.0.111, which is configured on Ethernet 1/1 port. It is an untrust zone, and the traffic that will go inside the GRE tunnel, which is between this IP and this IP, right, would be the IP address that is configured on the loopback interface, which is 11.11.11.108 and 11.11.11.11, right? So these traffic goes inside the GRE tunnel. And the tunnel interface on the Palo Alto firewall is in trust zone, right? And the GRE physical interface, which is ETH1/1, is in untrust zone. Configuration is pretty simple. Let's get started on the Palo Alto firewall. All right, so on my screen, this is the Palo Alto access. And inside the network, you can see here, this is the ETH1/1, which is having the IP address 192.168.0.111. And we have the loopback interface, which is with the name loopback 11.11.11.111, same as what we have on screen. And the ETH 1/1 is in untrust zone. And it is in virtual router default, which is the default virtual router, and the loopback is again in the default virtual router, and it is in trust security zone, just like what I have in the diagram, network topology. And we have a default tunnel, and we are going to use this tunnel for our GRE tunnel creation. All right. So to do the configuration, you will have to go to GRE tunnel under the network, GRE tunnels, click on add, name the GRE tunnel. And then select the physical outgoing interface, which would be the local IP of the GRE packet. So it is going to be ETH1/1, just like what I explained here. The GRE tunnel would be between 192.168.0.108 and 192.168.0.111, which is the local. This is the remote peer. And IP address, click on the IP. This is the IP configured on the Ethernet 1/1. Sometimes if you're using DHCP IP on ETH1/1, so it might not show you the IP address here if you select any of these options. So I guess that maybe the restrictions on the Palo Alto firewall, whereas if you are using DHCP on this interface, ETH1/1, it might not update the IP address here. but then we are having the static IP, so there's no issues in GUI of Palo Alto updating that IP address. So this is the local peer IP. And the remote peer IP would be the IP address of the Fortigate firewall, port 1. All right. And the tunnel interface, like I just showed you, is the default tunnel. We do not want any keep alives. We can do the configuration later on. That's it. Let me just show you the default tunnel. So we are using this default tunnel, which is in trust zone and which is in default peer. So all the interfaces that we are using here is in the single virtual router. And your tunnel interface is in trust zone. Loop back again is in trust zone. So the traffic that comes in, the actual ping packet that gets encapsulated into GRE packet, would be, having the destination, if it is coming from the FortiGate firewall, the Palo Alto firewall, would be, decapsulation will happen on the logical tunnel interface, which is in trust. And the destination itself is on the loopback, which is again in trust. So now that we have configured the GRE tunnel here, all right. So GRE tunnel interface security zone, it is updating itself automatically to untrust, because our exit interface ETH1/1 is in untrust zone. All right. And the next configuration, okay, I'll show you the zone interface configuration as well. So you can see here clearly that the untrust zone is only having ETH1/1. Trust is having loopback, tunnel, and the GRE tunnel itself is using the exit interface ETH1/1. So it is getting into the untrust zone. So you will have to remember the zones where the interfaces are, so that it'll be easy for you to configure the policy. So now that we are done with the configuration of the GRE tunnel, let's go to default VR and let's try to add a static route there. So the static route on the Palo Alto would look like, with the destination 11.11.11.108 pointing to the tunnel interface, which is our GRE interface. And there's no need to specify the next hop. Destination would be 11.11.11.108/32. Interface is tunnel, which is our GRE tunnel. Next hop is none. So if you have a numbered tunnel, which is the GRE numbered tunnel, you can add the IP address of the remote tunnel interface. In my case, I don't have the numbered tunnel, so I'm selecting the next hop as none. Click on OK. Okay, so now we have the GRE tunnel, we have the routes. So next thing, what we will have to do is the configuration of the security policy. Go to the security policy. For this particular firewall, I have everything disabled, which means the intra zone is also disabled or action is denied, and inter zone, traffic is also blocked. So you will have to explicitly define a policy to allow any traffic, to allow any ping on any of the interfaces. So let's try to create the policy. So as per the diagram, we have everything, all our logical interface is in trust zone, and our destination is also in trust zone. So let's try to create a policy. Okay, name it as GRE trust or anything as per your understanding. Trust. And then try to select the destination zone as trust and click OK. So we'll give it a try and then I'll show you the difference. There's no netting configured here. Okay, so we have the security policy from trust to trust, which allows any traffic which is not recommended in the production environment. So make sure you have a little more granularity to the policy that you configure. This is just for the demonstration, so I'm not adding any source or destination. So now let's go to the CLI. So this is the FortiGate firewall. All right. Let's try to update the source. Okay. And let's try to initiate a ping 11.11.11. Okay. And on the Paloalto, you can check the statistics using the command show interface. Tunnel is the name of the tunnel that we have. You can see here, GRE turn. Interface status is showing as up. These are the statistics. All right, let's try to initiate some type of traffic there. And let's try to check the statistics. So the packet drop is 15 before we start any testing. And you can see here, packet drop is not increasing. Packet receive is 25. Let's try to give it a try one more time. 2515. You can see here it is not increasing. So let's go to the GUI to inspect. Okay. So this is what will happen if you don't create a policy from untrust to trust. Logically, the decapsulation of traffic happens on the GRE tunnel, which is in the trust zone, and your destination is also in trust zone. So by default, the GRE tunnel, which is our logical tunnel, is in untrust zone. So we need to have a security policy from untrust to trust. So that is what is missing here. You can see here, there is no hit on this particular policy, just because we need one more policy from untrust to trust because of my scenario, because the traffic is actually coming onto the untrust zone, which is ETH1/1, where the GRE tunnel is, because the GRE tunnel is using the exit interface ETH1/1, which by default is in untrust. And our GRE tunnel is using the actual tunnel as this, which is in trust, and destination is in, also in trust. So we need two policy in my scenario. If you have everything in the single zone, just like untrust, then you would require a single policy from untrust to allow the traffic. because I have interzone and intrazone also in deny. So I need explicit policies here. Let's try to create one more policy as per my network topology. Okay, I will name it as GRE untrust. Let's try to add this zone as untrust, this zone as trust. That's it. Boom. So now the new policy that we just created, GRE untrust, is from untrust to trust, which will then allow any traffic that is coming onto ETH1/1, and then virtual decapsulation on tunnel, and that is actually going to trust. So that should fix the issue. So you can see here the hit count is increasing on the intrazone. Okay, let's try to commit this change. Packet drop is still at 15. Packet receive is still at 25. Let's try to give it a try. That's it. So this was one thing that you should always have in your mind while configuring the GRE tunnel on the Palo Alto Firewall, which is a little different from the rest of the firewalls that you have, which is zone-based like the SRX Juniper or the Fortigate, which is the interface-based. But then the actual fundamentals are same. So you can see here, packet drop 15, it is not increasing. Packet receive might increase here in our case. We can see here, it increased to 30 because there were 5 packets transmitted. Now that we have 5 more packets coming in, so it'll increase to 35. You can see here. Well, from the Palo Alto firewall, as per the diagram, we'll initiate the traffic from the Palo Alto, from the loopback interface, 11.11.11.111 towards the destination, 11.11.11.108, which is behind the Fortigate firewall. Let's try to check the traffic there. So this is the Palo Alto firewall. I'll initiate the traffic. And you can see there, I'm able to ping that. So packet transmitted 6. Let's try to check the statistics. So you can see here, the packet transmitted is increasing. 6 plus 2, which is 8. I'll show you one more time. So 2 packets transmitted. You can see here 34. The last statistic showed us 32, which proves that the tunnel is active and we are able to send the packet across our GRE tunnel. The catch here was the configuration of the policy, since in my case it was little what do you say, complicated, because my tunnel interface, which the GRE tunnel was using, was in trust and the destination was also in trust. But then the actual GRE tunnel that we created was using the external interface ETH1/1, which took us to the untrust zone. So that's why we configured a policy to allow the traffic from untrust to trust. And then since the intra-zone blocking is in place, so we have to explicitly define a policy trust to trust to allow the traffic. If in your scenario there is no intra-zone blocking, then this particular policy is not required. But in my case, I have the intra-zone blocking in place, so I explicitly define this policy. That's all in this video. I hope I was able to explain you all about the GRE configuration on the Palo Alto Firewall. And for the documentation part, I will update this article. So you can go through this article for the configuration assistance. And for the FortiGate firewall configuration, you can again go to the other link, which I have already explained. And for the video demonstration, you can search for the older videos of mine, whereas in I've explained the GRE configuration on Fortigate firewall as well. So that's the end of this particular session, and would request you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. See you in the next video. Bye bye.